I like to bring you along with me on journeys sometimes. Yes, I like to beckon with my finger, come hither while I take you on a journey to a different place, to a different time. Uh, would you like this to be one such week?
I have been waiting all week for this particular journey.
Very well, very well. Then won't you please wave your world behind and come with me to Britain in 1980.
All right, I'm there.
Right.
Let's do this.
The United Kingdom in 1980, where there is widespread industrial action in manufacturing, in the steel industry, widespread strikes. There's the threat of strike in the coal industry as well over pay, unemployment ever rising. Okay, unemployment in Britain in 1980 reached a post-war high of 2 million, peaked at 2 million for the first time since the 1930s.
Wow.
Yes, it is a country in recession. It is a country being run by the Conservative government. So, conservatism with a capital C, where, Margaret Thatcher is being warned by her own fucking cabinet that it's her economic policies, her governance that is the cause of this rising employment, this rising inflation.
And I'm sure that she reacted by then shifting her policies to accommodate better the economic realities of the United Kingdom.
No. For as Thatcher famously said in 1980, the lady's not for turning. In 1980, the Yorkshire Ripper, Peter Sutcliffe, is very much active and busy, murdering 2 women and attacking 2 others. He'll be caught soon, by the way. He'll be caught very soon and charged in January 1981. UK in 1980. In April, over 6 days, the Iranian embassy siege took place. All right, 6 armed Iranian Arab men broke into and took control of the Iranian embassy in London and took 26 people hostage for 6 days.
Yeah.
Britain in 1980, it saw the opening of a amusement park by the name of Alton Towers.
I have heard of this.
35 years later, an accident on its newest roller coaster, the Smiler, will lead to a lot of damage, a lot of heartache, and more than 1 missing leg.
Pass.
Yes, indeed. Britain in 1980.
Go ahead.
In December, the 26th and 28th of December, unexplained lights are sighted near RAF Woodbridge in Suffolk, which went on to become known as the Rendelsham Forest Incident, the most well-known UFO event in Britain at the time.
I have definitely heard of that as well.
There you go. That is a snapshot of Britain in 1980. Corrigan.
What an interesting landscape Britain in 1980 is. I feel like it is in such a different place than the United States at that point, where politically the conservatism absolutely runs through. That, your Thatcher era coincides with our Reagan era, and a lot of the sort of values that go along with that, and the economic devastation that wreaked havoc on our respective nations during that time. But in terms of, I always find it fascinating when I watch something from Britain around that time, that, like you're saying, with like this sort of industrial aspect of it, where America hasn't been like an industry-based economy in a very long time. And so I think that shapes a lot of sort of the tone of what Britain was like at that time, what the imagery of the United Kingdom is like at that time compared to our very sort of bright mall culture that typifies what you think of 1980, the 80s in the United States. It just feels like very
completely.
Yeah, just in terms of the tone, the temperature of the time.
I get that. And if you were to take that entire feeling, that entire atmosphere, that entire vibe of Britain in 1980, you could sum it up in one face, and that is Thatcher. It is very much Thatcher's Britain, and the economic impact of that phase of conservatism in the UK are still 100% being felt in towns and communities, not least my own stomping ground, South Wales, has never been the same since Thatcher's reign. Okay.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you something. It was around 1980 when video shops, mate, started springing up everywhere in the UK, right?
Of course, yeah.
Home video had started to become affordable, kind of very late 70s.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing, right? As a side note, it's been said in more than one place that unemployment in the UK, the amount of rising unemployment in the UK, was actually a contributing factor to the video shop boom happening as quickly as it did. Out of work men,
right,
needing new ideas, new sources of income. In communities, working class communities, the video man, the video shop. That's the kind of environment we're talking about here. Community stores. You'd call them mom and pop stores, no doubt.
Right, exactly. It's kind of almost a predecessor to the unfortunate, but the hustle culture, the sort of Uber and delivery stuff and Airbnb and all that kind of stuff that happens now. What do you do
maybe
when you can't get
social DNA there, perhaps? Yes.
Right. When you can't get regular jobs, what do you do to try to figure out how to make a life for yourself? So the video culture would totally make sense. Exactly.
Betamax and VHS video recorders were finally affordable, expensive as fuck, but affordable. Home burglary took a big spike around this area because videos were so coveted, video players were so stealable.
Wow.
Home security took off, burglary had a big spike. So here's the thing, right? The rise in home video happened way fucking quicker than law could keep up with it.
Of course.
In the 80s, there was no UK legislation at all to regulate video content, right?
So there was there for like mainstream film, like
absolutely, yes.
Okay, and it just did not apply to video culture.
At the time, we had the BBFC, which at the time was known as the British Board of Film Censorship. More on them in a little while, but at the time their remit was only for cinema and publicly distributed films. They did not have video within their remit. The only thing that could be used to regulate and legislate video content was the Obscene Publications Act of 1959. Okay.
All right.
The only thing the law had. Now, into this febrile environment, your big distributors were quite slow off the mark when it comes to home video in the UK. They were scared of piracy. They were scared of diluting their theatrical revenues, with releasing video to home and rental markets. So independent, low budget features, in particular horror and porn,
of course,
flooded the home video market. Okay. Now, some of these films had already been certified by the BBFC after their cinema release, but others that didn't bother going to cinema either bypassed the BBFC completely or were refused certification. There was a loophole. Videos didn't need to be certified at the time because there was no legislation, right?
Right.
So all we have is the Obscene Publications Act. Now, this defines obscene content, and I'm quoting here, as content which may tend to deprave and corrupt persons who are likely, having regard to all relevant circumstances, to read, see, or hear the matter contained or embodied in it.
Right. That's a very, ridiculous. It's like the, pornography when you see it kind of situation.
Exactly. It is broad. It is so wide open to interpretation. Yes. Now, the UK Director of Public Prosecutions at the time, right? A lad by the name of Sir Thomas Hetherington,
Boy,
a guy with a military background, and it fell to him to interpret the Obscene Publications Act as broadly as he liked. Okay, let me just read that again. Material which may deprave or corrupt persons who are likely, having regard to all relevant circumstances, to read, see, or hear the matter contained or embodied in it. What the fuck does that even mean?
Corrupt. Yeah. What is?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So, having no other recourse, having no other law or framework or even precedent for the kinds of mad shit which was being produced at the time, right? And we'll talk about the movies themselves in a mo, but
oh boy,
all manner of shit was being produced and rushed to a home video market to capitalize on this boom.
And these are British productions that are being made.
Oh, British, Italian, German, American.
Okay.
Independent, cheap ass horror.
Of course.
really some really cool stuff and a whole lot of shite, right? But police raids on video shops became common.
Well, now okay, I feel like we skipped a step here. How do we have police raids if we don't have any legislation?
We don't have legislation. We've got the Obscene Publications Act.
Okay.
This
so
is an
it's
act
just
of
basically
law.
Okay.
So this is content which is been deemed by our lad Sir Thomas Hetherington to fall afoul of the official fucking Obscene Publications Act.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
having
that
a corrupting influence.
That's just general anything that any form of media that would have covered that obscenity.
Exactly this.
If you're selling it somewhere, I can come in there and say this is obscene and arrest you for it.
Exactly. So you get police raiding video shops, obviously clumsily, with very little regard. Have you ever seen Dolly Parton's The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas?
I actually never have.
That was seized. A fucking musical, a Dolly Parton musical was seized in 1982 under the mistaken belief that it was a pornographic feature, right? In 1982 was when the shit hit the fan, okay? The press went absolutely, completely fucking apeshit. A few things happened. Vipco, right? A video releasing agency. They took out a full-page ad in a video industry trade magazine with a massive fucking full-size picture of the cover of Driller Killer. Right?
Nice. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And from memory, I believe the line on the video case is, "The blood runs in rivers and the drill tears through flesh and bone." I think that's what it says. I haven't checked that. That's from memory.
It's really straightforward. It's like not
fucking
even
brilliant.
Like clever. It's just,
it's on the,
this
on
is
the nose,
really
we
fucking
say,
gory.
And that prompted complaints to the Advertising Standards Agency. People fucking ran up complaining about this fucking advert. A publisher called Go Video, right? Fucking idiots. Did their best to promote interest in cannibal holocaust, right? By anonymously complaining about it. They wrote a campaign.
Go ahead.
Please.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, if they're, although this predates sort of our panic about this kind of stuff, although that happened for many, many years, but if you're following off of like an American model of how things work, the entire controversy over censorship and everything here, and the tipper stickers, those little parental guidance stickers that led to a boom in people buying that stuff. So it makes sense as a marketing campaign, as long as you don't get the law coming at you.
Exactly what happened, right? Yeah. When Go Video wrote in complaining about cannibal holocaust, who the fuck did they write to? Mary Whitehouse.
Okay, Mary Whitehouse. Tell me about this broad.
Notorious conservative activist, head of a pressure group called the National Viewers and Listeners Association, right? Okay,
so this is a lobby, essentially.
Exactly this, a government pressure group.
Right.
And she started a public campaign to raise public awareness and to protect our children, yeah? And this is when the press step in. So notorious fucking horrific shit rag, the Daily Mail, on the 12th of May, 1982, wrote an article called The Secret Video Show, which stated, and I quote, "More and more children, well used to video recorders in schools, are catching on to the fact that their parents' machine can give them the opportunity to watch the worst excesses of cinema, sex, and violence. The problem arises because video is now the fastest growing part of the home entertainment industry, and yet is too young to have developed its own controls." Terrifying stuff. It's out of control. The Sunday Times chip in on the 23rd of May with their article, "How High Street Horror is Invading the Home," right? This was, by the way, the first time that video nasties was used as a term in the national press. Okay, so what was this publication again? The Sunday Times. Sunday Times. They're the first to use video nasties. Indeed. And they warned that uncensored horror video cassettes available to anybody of any age have arrived in Britain's high streets. They exploit extremes of violence and are rapidly replacing sexual pornography as the video trade's biggest money spinner. The nasties are far removed from the suspense of the traditional horror film. They dwell on murder, multiple rape, butchery, sadomasochism, mutilation of women, cannibalism, and Nazi atrocities. Wow. I like that it's disturbing that it's surpassed pornography. Can you believe it? It's more worse than the porn. Than porn. It's even worse than that. But like you said, like with the parental advisory stickers.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm a fucking kid in 1980s, which I was, I'm like, oh, let me get me some of this.
Yeah, exactly. Like whatever's in there must be really good if they're trying to keep me from watching it.
Yep. Interestingly, right, this lack of regulation in the video market is kind of in contrast to what we had in the cinema, where, like I said, the BBFC, who were at the time the British Board of Film Censors,
mm-hmm.
they could legally demand cuts to films ahead of their commercial release in cinemas, as in the movie censor.
Right. Yes.
Yes, which we've seen recently, where, you know, the people who work for the BBFC would have to watch hours and hours of uncut horror material and make not just recommendations, but demands of what to cut and when, down to the second, down to the frame, down to the shot, to ensure films could get cinema releases.
So wild.
Isn't it? Completely insane. But all of this did, all that Mary Whitehouse did, all the press did, all of the uproar did, was raise awareness and increase public demand for this content, right? Until, at the insistence of Mary Whitehouse, at the insistence of the rabid press, the government passed in 1984 the Video Recordings Act.
Okay.
The Video Recordings Act of 1984. They renamed the BBFC. They weren't the British Board of Film Censorship anymore. They were now the British Board of Film Classification.
Okay. So basically giving your ratings to stuff.
Exactly this. And home video became part of their remit as well.
Okay. Yeah. So it expands their power beyond the cinema.
Yeah, exactly this. Now, at the time, they were headed up by a guy called James Thurman, a notorious, put it like this, when he left in 2000, that's when everything started getting released uncut. Put it that way.
Okay, I was wondering. Yeah, okay.
You know?
So this is the person who's really got the firm vice on 100%. The content. And until 2000. Jesus Christ.
Until the year 2000. Like I said last week when I was talking about Maniac, it's so fucking good over the last 20 years that all of this shit we can now just watch restored in 4K, tarted up.
Yeah, I mean, just to think of that, like in 2000, I was like in high school.
Yes.
You know, the idea that at that point,
yep,
shit was still censored like this is wild.
But what the Video Recordings Act basically made the Director of Public Prosecutions completely obsolete, right? Up until then, the infamous Video Nasties list, the DPP, they kept an ever-changing list of films which it deemed obscene and therefore illegal. Yeah.
Okay.
And this list was always changing. Well, you know, they might try and prosecute some distributors and fail, so they would take them off the list, put them back on the list. It was a fluid, movable list of films, which became known as the Video Nasties list.
So it's actually like, it's not just simply, here's a list of criteria that if it appears in a film, this is illegal or anything like that, but actually actively keeping a running list of specific video
films,
nasties that
you cannot, which is deemed obscene.
Wow.
At one point or another, 72 separate films were on that list.
I honestly am surprised it's not more than that.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I mean, but when we'll talk about the specific movies in a second, it's fucking wild. I mean, the list was divided into a few different sections, right? There was section 1, which was for films which had either been prosecuted or had been attempted to be prosecuted. Really the bad shit,
right?
Which the DPP could not consciously allow the public to be subjected to. And then you can't
even take it apart and censor it out. It's just
no, sir. This is prosecuted films. And then you've got the second section, which was for air quotes less obscene movies. If you were caught in possession or distributing a movie on section 2, you can hand your movie into the authorities and it can be confiscated, and that would be an admission of guilt, and then okay, that's enough. But if you had a movie in section 1, they would attempt prosecution in the fullest extent of the law.
And this is possession too, not just trying to sell it. Like if you own this movie, potentially, I'm sure they didn't like spend a ton of time going after individuals, but
No,
could.
You're right, but that's
punished.
the main difference between the two lists. If you were in possession of material on Section 2, the holder could then admit liability by giving up the material,
right.
Whereas on 1, they would actively seek to prosecute you.
Wow.
Incredible stuff. Again,
Amazing.
though rendered obsolete by the Video Recordings Act of 1984, and even more so since 2001 when Furman left the BBC, because most of these movies have now been completely remastered, restored, right, and given loving home releases.
I'm sure. I mean, and that's such a, like, that's the obvious backfire of this, right? You keep something out from people seeing it for all these years, and the moment that, you know, dude's out, those become like the thing everyone immediately buys. All those eyes that you saved from corruption then now are all on these videos.
So some of the films in Section 1, the worst of the worst, the prosecuted films, a lot of these, you know, I went on to see on second or third generation VHS dubs, just wonderful fucking halcyon days. Absurd, one of my all-time favorites. I fucking love it. It's ropey as fuck through, you know, 2022 eyes, but
of course,
something special about that movie. Blood Feast, for fuck's sake. Herschel Gordon Lewis's Blood Feast. A film that is clearly a comedy.
The tone has nothing to do with
nothing at all. The Burning, Cannibal Holocaust, Cannibal Ferox, Driller Killer, of course, Faces of Death. Let me see, Snuff. Does that ring a bell?
Well, is that the one that was supposed to actually
presented
be a snuff
as
film?
A
yes,
snuff film.
Yeah. I think I saw part of that when I was in my PhD.
Oh, nice. Okay. I Spit on Your Grave, Last House on the Left, SS Experiment Camp, Gestapo's Last Orgy.
Okay.
Not one I've seen. Zombie Flesh Eaters.
I mean, it sounds like Bad Taste, but like in
really
Bad Taste, not like the film Bad Taste.
On the lesser list, on the non-prosecuted list, and Section 2.
Wait, so all of those were Section 1.
Yes.
So all of those you could be prosecuted for having in possession, and they went through, were like,
they
go ahead.
They were actively attempted to prosecute people for distributing those films.
Wow.
A lot of the prosecutions didn't make court. A lot of the prosecutions failed, which would lead to films being taken off and moved between Section 2 and Section 1. By having a movie on that prosecuted list, if you were distributing it, you were in the shit.
Right. Okay.
Let me see. What was on?
Yeah, what's Section 2? What have we got?
Section 2. All right. So The Evil Dead. You know,
wow.
I'm just trying to think what some of the big ones are. The Toolbox Murders, Zombie Creeping Flesh, Living Dead at Manchester Morgue.
I just saw the Toolbox Murders, actually.
There you go. Did it fuck you up?
It was very weird. It was a super weird movie.
Inferno, some stuff that you know with artistic merit. Inferno's Argento, isn't it?
I was gonna say, is that the one that's talking about?
Yes, indeed, it is. And then there was actually a third list as well, Section 3, where you were still liable to confiscation under a less obscene charge, right?
Okay.
So we don't like it, and we're going to take it, but you're a scamp. And this was really good stuff. You know, Dawn of the Dead, Friday the 13th, Friday the 13th 2, Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Right. So that was never released in theaters in the United Kingdom.
Home video.
Okay, wait, but okay. So some of the stuff could be it could be in a theater, but you couldn't get a tape of it?
Yes. Stuff that had been released to home video before one of these acts would have to be resubmitted to the BBFC for certification afterwards. Then you got things like Texas again, which was again, as soon as James Furman left, it was passed completely uncut in 1999.
Right.
Just incredible how sharply and almost completely 180 attitudes changed as soon as certain key players either died or left their posts.
So it really was, I mean, it was a matter of power. This wasn't what the general British public was clamoring for the heads of the people who were creating this filth. There was a handful of people who had the power and the powerful lobby, this Mary Whitehouse, to say, this is unacceptable and make a disproportionate fuss over it. And it just kept this all in its grip for
nothing more than a conservative moral panic. That is all it was.
Amongst only powerful people. The rest of the country's unbothered by this. Everyone's going about their day, not worried about the corruption of.
Completely.
It's truly bananas to think about, because really, I mean, again, just coming from, I guess, because in general, when I think about the UK and what you're saying here about it being such a 180 makes sense to me, because I think about not being as hung up on stuff as Americans are, that we are, I guess not always, but that in our media, we are much more sensitive about content than Brits are.
Well, in I think back even within my own lifetime and times that I can remember perfectly well, being absolutely astounded at just how arbitrary and pointless some of these cuts were. We had to call them Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, for fuck's sake, because we couldn't use the word ninja.
Is that just racism? Like, why couldn't you use ninja?
In the Ninja Turtles movie, that fantastic Golden Harvest film, the first Ninja Turtles movie.
Oh, yeah.
For a long old while, every single shot of Michelangelo using his nunchucks had to be cut.
What?
Exactly. Yeah, I know. Fucked up.
Wow.
You couldn't,
like, literally, is it just racism? Is that all it is?
No, certainly not. It's again, it's conservative fear. Oh, kids will see this and will do the same thing.
But what about all the other violence
influencing
in it?
Kids?
Why only nunchucks? Why ninja?
Hero turtles, mate. Hero turtles. It isn't racial. It
feels like Chinese whispers all over again, Mark.
Yeah, maybe that's another episode. But you couldn't see a fucking chainsaw in a film.
Yeah.
If chainsaw was in the title, or if there was a fucking, a chainsaw used in any context other than gardening, that film would not get passed.
Really put a damper on the lumberjack film industry.
It really did.
Really hard times out there. It's incredible. Because so I mean, a lot of this stuff that you're talking about is stuff that I saw as a child.
Oh, we saw it as children.
Well, yeah, but
it just made us industrious,
because it was just on TV or whatever, and easily accessed with no fear of anyone coming after you for it. Not that we didn't have our own moral, and maybe I'll talk about this next week or soon. Our own censorship panics and things like that here.
I would love to hear that.
But it's just very different.
It delights me to hear that you think of us as more liberal in terms of the content that we can see, but 'twas not always thus, my dear co-host.
'Twas not.